I'm Talib Visram, and this is World Changing Ideas, where we investigate how leading innovators are solving our most challenging issues. On today's episode, Unlocking Plant Potential. Today I'll be sitting down with Sofia Elizondo, the COO and co-founder of Brightseed. I think a great place to start, Sophia, would be, for layman people like me, what is Brightseed? What do you do?
We are a biosciences company, and we use AI to explore the dark matter of the plant kingdom. All of those small molecules or compounds that have a tremendous impact on health. We illuminate their presence and we connect them to potential health benefits.
And how does the tech work? Can you explain this Forager artificial intelligence?
Yeah, for sure. It all starts with the plant, really. Forager predicts what are the compounds inside of plants and then predicts what these compounds will do for health. And once we have found a bioactive molecule that is of interest, then Forager can tell us what plant sources can we find it in. So it is an artificial intelligence that connects plants, their bioactives, and their health benefits. And we can interrogate it in many different directions.
So you're starting with a plant and you're essentially mining it. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. You would think that we know everything there is to know about plants. We have space telescopes and like missions to Mars. We actually don't know what is inside of plant as much as we think we would. There are thousands of compounds inside of plants, and the world really only knows less than 1% of those. It blows my mind every time I say it that we know so little.
So what are some of the things that you've learned that we didn't know before?
Yeah, so we have, for example, we found that black pepper has the presence of a compound that is really important for metabolic health. Metabolic health, you may have heard of it recently. It is, after age, the number one reason why COVID complications exist. Metabolic health is super pervasive in the US. 80% of US Americans are metabolically unhealthy, which means you're much more likely to have diabetes, heart and liver failure, high blood pressure. And the liver is a really important organ to maintain a healthy metabolism. It clears and detoxifies your blood. And so we found a compound in the humble spice of black pepper that actually helps your liver clear this fat that accumulates in this organ that leads to metabolic unhealthiness, and therefore all of these diseases that can cascade from that. It's a wonderful example of what nature has to offer, what is there, and how much impact that can have for our health. And it blows, it is surprising to me that it is kind of there for discovery. We don't need to go to exotic plant sources or Amazonian flowers to find compounds that really have an impact.
So what are you doing that's different from, say, what health or pharmaceutical companies have been doing? There are a lot of compounds that we do know about. What's different about what you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. Traditionally, medicine does come from plants. There are 2/3 of small molecule drugs are actually derived from natural products, and half of which are plant sources. So Taxol for breast cancer, the active ingredient in metformin for diabetes, even the active ingredient in aspirin comes from plant sources. And so pharma has known this for a long time. What has been very difficult, however, is the elucidation of these compounds that are present in the plant source, but we basically don't have equipment or machines or ability to decipher their presence. And so pharma has turned to synthetic compounds. They essentially design molecules in a lab and then test these molecules in high throughput, very effective, like robotic ways. The problem with that approach is that it generates a ton of compounds that may or may not have an impact for health, but it really just generates a lot of noise. There isn't a reason why these compounds would work with our human biology to affect change and health. What we do is instead expand on the knowledge on that library of plant compounds, what is known as the dark matter of the plant kingdom.
Mm.
And these molecules are super impactful because we co-evolved with plants. Like humans forget that sometimes that we're also animals and we're also like another living experiment on this earth. The reason our bodies work the way they do is because we ate what we ate millions of years ago. And when we bring these compounds to light with the kind of technology and the AI that Forager brings to the table, then we can be very specific and pinpoint this is the natural molecule that has a very potent effect. It's indeed a bioactive that then provides a desired health benefit. So to bottom line it, this is how it's different from pharma. Pharma synthesizes or generates like fake compounds in the lab, whereas Brightseed's starting point is in nature. And we believe we only need to learn how to look.
And just so we get the terminology right, when you talk about this plant dark matter, is that the same as a plant-based bioactive? And is that the same as micronutrients and phytonutrients?
Yeah, I love that you asked that question. So here's a big picture. Plants give us four kinds of things. They provide plant protein, and there's been a lot of conversation about plant protein lately, in particular with respect to replacing meat protein. They also give us oils like olive oil. They give us fibers or sugars, like different kinds of carbohydrates, and they provide small molecules or natural chemicals or micronutrients that are what Brightseed focuses on. These small molecules that are the ones that are active in the body, the ones that actually like set off a cascade of events biologically, like that example of clearing fat from the liver. These are called bioactives. They are bioactive molecules that plants create that have a biological activity in our bodies. And interestingly, a plant's genome is so complex. It's actually can be many times more complex than a human genome, if you would believe it, because it encodes for the capability of creating a lot of different kinds of small molecules, a ton of chemical diversity. And this is a source of richness that we've just started to tap into.
Why don't we go back to the very start? How did the idea for Brightseed come about? How did you even know how to look for this stuff? How did you even know, that it was there for the finding?
Yeah, I love going back to the start, and it has been quite a journey. Talib, I was born in a family of entrepreneurs. One side of the family was focused in agriculture. The other side of the family was focused in chemicals. And so in a way, I was kind of born to create a company like Brightseed. And I had always have had a focus in my career on the social impact that private enterprise can have. I've explored this space as an investor, as a consultant, as an advisor to the United Nations, and the impact that I am convinced that the private sector and that the markets can have tremendous and powerful impact on society's most pressing problems. And so when I met my co-founders, Jim and Lee, in a previous company, we all shared, first of all, the conviction that health was one of the most challenging problems of our time, and in particular, chronic diseases. Chronic diseases can be prevented, and they are a giant burden on our healthcare costs today. And not to mention a giant burden on individuals and families, affecting the quality of life. And so we were convinced that this was an issue that we wanted to spend the rest of our lives addressing. And we knew that the world of bioactives was underexplored. We know that plants have a lot to offer. And one of my co-founders was a pioneer in using machine learning to tap into this plant kingdom in ways that were just novel and new to science and society. So we shared values and we shared a vision that plants can hold the keys to health, and in particular to chronic diseases, and off we went.
And would you consider Brightseed a food as medicine company?
Great question. Yes, yes, and so absolutely. What makes food medicine are the bioactives inside of food. We talked about drugs as an example. So 2/3 of drugs, small molecule drugs, are derived from plants, and these like natural chemicals, these bioactives that make plants specifically potent. And so Brightseed illuminates the presence of these bioactives and enables the product application of these bioactives in food, for sure. And Brightseed is a platform technology company that across the board enables the connection between plants and people for health in multiple product applications. So yes, for food and beyond food. We enable extracts and supplements and even pharmaceutical ingredients. We have an impact for how these plants are grown and processed. And so as a platform technology, we are building infrastructure where none had existed before and enabling this transition and truly this revolution to happen.
What kind of plants are you mining? You talked about black pepper before, just some examples really.
Tell me what you have in your pantry or in the farmer's market, and that is where we start.
Right.
We have a history of use and consumption for a reason. There are ancient traditions that have used different plant sources, different parts of plants for centuries. And we start with the knowledge that we have. Plants are immensely rich, and we may already be sitting on that gold. We don't need to go look for exotic sources. And at the end of the day, as Brightseed, if Brightseed is to have a giant outsides impact, then we have it on the plants that are known for human consumption, and not necessarily on endangered plant species on some mountaintop somewhere.
Yeah. Do you have kind of any stats that you could share that give us kind of an impression of what you've tackled so far, how many compounds you've tackled so far?
Yeah, yes. The space of plant compounds is huge. We're talking about millions, probably tens of millions of plant compounds exist. Science, if you put together all of the libraries in academia and in the private sector, and if you were to bundle all of them together, probably reach around tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 compounds. And Brightseed has already built a compound library of over 700,000 compounds. So we have sevenfold increased the visibility that society and humanity has into the compounds that plant sources create. And we're on track to reaching over 1 million by the end of the year, and then on a cadence of 1 million a year after that.
Once you've found a kind of a worthy compound, are you then turning that into a product to sell to companies?
Indeed. So once we find a compound, we go through the process of development and commercialization. And what that means is, we found a compound in black pepper, but let's choose the specific source of black pepper, the variety of black pepper. Let's process it in a way that it retains the goodness inside instead of strips, the plant from the bioactives the bioactives and the properties that it contains. And so there is a development of the process by which we can take it to a consumer in different forms. And there's also a very important efficacy track that we then move towards. So it's not only about using AI to predict the presence of a compound or to predict the likelihood that this compound will do something for your liver or your lungs or your skin. It's also about proving that. We validated preclinically. We just published on our first discovery in Nature the preclinical results of our first discovery. And then we validated clinically, and we're starting human clinical trials this year as well.
And who are some of the customers that you work with? Are you able to name them? Would we know them?
Yeah, we've I can name a couple.
Okay.
You probably know Danone, the yogurt maker.
Yeah.
And they're also the largest plant-based product company in the world, and they are behind Silk soy milk and almond milk, for example. We also work with Pharmabite, the supplements company. They are the owners of the brand called Nature's Made. And so if you walk down Walgreens or CVS and you see an aisle of yellow supplements, and that's Nature's Made.
I think you've said before that the overall aim of Brightseed is to turn the healthcare paradigm on its head. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Healthcare is a bit of an oxymoron because today's healthcare system doesn't look after health, it looks after disease. And so it is not until we are in a disease state that we hit the healthcare system. And then by that point, then most likely the only option is you go on drugs. And sometimes you go on drugs for the rest of your life. What Brightseed is doing is bringing visibility into those plant compounds, those bioactives that can maintain our optimal performance when we're in a healthy state and can reverse that trajectory when we are at risk of getting to a disease state. Because the whole objective is to avoid going into a disease and avoid having to go into drugs. And so in that way, we can turn the healthcare paradigm on its head with the precise knowledge of the potent bioactives that will make a difference. We were taking kind of traditional wisdom to an entire new level. We've always known we needed to eat, fruits and vegetables, but Talib, should you eat kale and I eat broccoli or the other way around? Why? What impact, does your body and microbiome has that informs that? What about broccoli sprouts versus a full-grown broccoli? We're blind to all of that. And so the very first step is let's shed some light on the potent bioactives that are there so that we can be very precise about avoiding disease states that require the care of our quote unquote healthcare system.
So is our current food production system, a little bit broken, that we're losing nutrients? Do we need to return nutrition to food?
I love that you said that, because that is where it all starts. The monoculture that drives most of agriculture today is stripping food, or is stripping these crops from their diversity, from their natural chemical diversity that is expressed, within the plants themselves. So it all starts with growing conditions, with mindfulness about how these plants are protected, packaged, processed, so that they can reach hands of consumers in any kind of form, in their whole forms, in their dried forms, in their packaged forms. Once we are able to valorize the bioactives that exist in these plant sources, then the revolution really starts from agriculture. Let's grow crops, not because they look, strawberries that look more red, or because, these are watermelons that can survive the distance, but let's grow crops that are chock full rich of potent bioactives that will prevent disease in the future. And that is where the supply chain begins, in agriculture, moving to, food distributors and packagers, to retailers and to consumers.
And finally, Sofia, just last year, if my figures are correct, Brightseed raised 27 million in growth financing, which brings total funding to 52 million since your launch. Really bright stuff. And so what's next?
What's next for Brightseed is to continue to build this infrastructure where none has existed before. We are enabling product applications across many different industries: agriculture, packaged food, produce, extracts, supplements, specialized ingredients. And what's next is to continue building that platform that then enables animal care and skin care, and even pharma applications. Truly, we have an opportunity to open up a world that science and industry has never been able to tap into before. And that is what we're focused on today.
Great. Well, Sofia, thank you so much for breaking it all down for us and telling us a little bit more about what you do. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Likewise.